Welcome to Freedom Journey's Sacred Places. Freedom Journeys is Word Radio's year-long storytelling initiative commemorating the 250th anniversary of the United States. We're celebrating 250 phenomenal Philadelphians whose stories have too often been overlooked or untold, and whose lives and legacies continue to shape our city, our country, and our world. As part of that initiative, Freedom Journeys, Sacred Places, produced and presented by Solomon Jones, explores the places where Black history happened and highlights the people working today to preserve these remarkable sites and the stories they hold. This series is made possible in part through the support of our community impact sponsor, the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia. And now, here's Solomon Jones.
When Crozer Chester Medical Center closed abruptly after its parent company went bankrupt in 2025, thousands lost their jobs and a community lost access to medical care. The uproar was immediate. The shutdown was controversial. But lost in the discussion was the Crozer Theological Seminary, which is next to the hospital. At that long-shuttered seminary, beneath the peeling paint of Old Main and Pearl Hall, there are echoes from the past, including the voice of its most famous graduate, Martin Luther King Jr., who entered the seminary in 1948 when he was just 19. Why did he decide to go to Crozer Theological Seminary?
He was visited often when he was at Morehouse by a couple people. One of them was the president of Crozer at the time, E.E. Aubrey, but also he had known about Reverend J. Pius Barber, who's known in Chester history. But it was one of those schools where King knew that it was liberal and it was radical in its own philosophy.
That's Patrick Parr. His book, The Seminarian, Martin Luther King Jr. Comes of Age, traced King's journey at Crozer. King had received seemingly reluctant recommendations from some of his college professors, including D. Kelsey, director of the Morehouse School of Religion, who said King's academic record was, quote, short of what may be called good. But at the seminary, King grew.
That building and King are interlinked because we have the entire map inside that building that shows where King had class. He was chairman of the devotions committee. He was at the chapel every Tuesday and Thursday giving a service. So we know that exact location where he was. We can follow him for 3 years inside Old Main building and around the Chester area. That was even more important than perhaps the building itself because he went out with Walter McCall, his best friend at that time, and he involved himself in other civil rights struggles. So this building is absolutely essential to understanding King as a person. To actually go into Old Main building and to say, well, this is where King was. This is his dorm room. This is where King played pool until 3 a.m. and he smoked cigarettes with his friends. Those types of things. I mean, that brings him to life in a way that we can't really ever find when, for example, he's giving the I Have a Dream speech in the March on Washington. That's a beautiful moment, but it's also been played over and over to such an extent that it becomes detached from reality.
And the reality was, Crozer was unlike anything King had ever seen in the South. Here's Shakia Gordon-Hutt from the MLK Center at Old Main Committee.
When King was actually at Crozer, this was the first place in the country that had white and black staff at the time. So, by them working in hand, I think this is like the first example of black and whites coming together. And I think that him being around black and white people and them working together, I think that was great into fueling, like we can work together, we can be one. And I think from that, he was able to take that on with him because he was being nurtured with that type of love and upbringing.
In some ways, Crozer, with white maids cleaning the rooms of both black and white seminarians, was a far cry from Southern segregation. But the specter of racism and violence reared its ugly head when King ran afoul of one of his white classmates. Here's Patrick Parr.
His name was Lucius Hall. He came from the South in Georgia, and they had been playing pranks with each other in Old Main Building, and they'd been removing furniture out of each other's dorm rooms just and put it on the outside where all the trees used to be. And one prank went a little too far, and Lucius Hall blamed King for instigating that prank, and Lucius went down to King's room and pointed a gun at him, and there was a definite possibility that he was going to pull that trigger, but there was someone, a friend of King's named Marcus Wood, he came down and he squelched that situation. He made sure that Lucius calmed down, and that King, who just stood there, he was a little bit in fear, but he was also kind of playing a bit of a poker face. So yeah, he was 19 years old in the first term, and he had a gun pointed at him by Lucius Hall, and he survived. Lucius Hall later left the school, and then King remained, and that wasn't one instance that happened in the Old Main Building.
But that wasn't the only racial violence going on in King's time. There were lynchings happening in Chester. Here's Shakia Gordon-Hutt.
Chester is a hard place. So just that time and the people, like the character of people, it was hard. So I think that was like a lot of shaping him, like just his atmosphere, who he was around during that time. Like that's where a lot of the lynchings and stuff went on, like all the time. The Schuylkill River, there were a lot of bodies that used to be dumped into the river. So I think him seeing those things made him like, no, this is serious. You know, I'm seeing people, real humans, and people dying and suffering.
Yet even in the face of such violence, King turned to his mentor, Reverend J. Pius Barber, and adopted a different strategy. How did Barber influence him? I put the question to Patrick Parr. What did he learn from Reverend Barber?
Oh my. He learned how to preach. To put it very plain, he learned how to preach from Reverend J. Pius Barber. I think also he learned how to debate. Reverend Barber and King had many debates about Gandhi, and because Gandhi had been assassinated January 1948, it was still something that was a part of the pacifist mentality in 48, 49, 50 that what to do about Gandhi's legacy, can it be replicated? Those types of things were occurring. Those conversations were occurring between Barber and King and also other seminarians. And he would bring that conversation back into that building at Old Main.
So how did King move from being what one of his Morehouse professors called a little above average in scholarship to being one of the greatest orators and leaders America has ever seen? The answer, according to Patrick Parr, lies in the halls of Crozer Theological Seminary.
His life presence is still kind of emanates from those walls, because you can still find King walking down this hall or going to class on the first floor or playing pool in the basement underneath the chapel. And the chapel ceiling itself has still maintained some sense of history from that time when King lived there. So he's around when you walk through those hallways.
So King didn't start out as a pacifist. He came across the work of Gandhi. How did that transform him?
I think with King, it starts with the conversations he had with Reverend Barber. He says that there was a moment with when he went to Philadelphia to listen to Mordecai Johnson, and Mordecai had just come back from India and had learned about Gandhi's philosophy, Soul Force, and that's when King started to really dig into Gandhi's life, and he bought many books from that presentation with Mordecai Johnson. But I would say that without Barber there to sort of fan the flame for King to understand Gandhi's legacy and perhaps to take elements of that, I don't know if King really goes in that direction.
So when I think of King, I don't necessarily think of someone who's a pacifist. I think of someone who's a strategist and who adopted the strategy that Gandhi used in order to win some civil rights battles. Do you see it that way, Patrick?
I do. And the reason I brought up the word pacifist is because when King is 19, 20, 21, he's batting around a lot of ideologies. He's figuring out what it is that feels right to him and to his family back in the South. So, yeah, I would not call him a pacifist. I think you're right, Solomon, that he's much closer to more of a strategist.
But however you define King, it's clear that he was a leader. And that leadership was shaped at Crozer Theological Seminary, specifically in Old Main, a building whose history stretches back to 1858. During the Civil War, it was used as a hospital for Union and Confederate soldiers. It became Crozer Theological Seminary in 1868. But what happens to the history?
What we determined, that building has been through a myriad of uses. Especially since the time Dr. King was there. So any real trace of him is gone. Any personal trace of him is gone. But what we did was we identified his dorm room. We removed the dorm room door. We removed the closet door, both of which we deemed to be original. We removed the framing around the entry door. We removed the transom.
That's Dave Kelso, a preservationist who's working with a company called Chariot Alaire. In January 2026, the company purchased the campus housing the medical center and the theological seminary. Until recently, Civil War soldiers' names were etched onto the walls of Old Main, but Kelso has worked with Chariot Alaire to remove those and other artifacts.
You only get one chance to do this. My concern initially in regards to these artifacts was, I do a lot of work in Chester and I've done work at the Third Presbyterian that burned down. My concern was the building being set ablaze. So right away, we identified those objects as the only tangible remaining things of Dr. King's time there. So first and foremost, we removed those items.
So there were some items there and they were removed. Where are the items now?
They're stored on property.
Okay. So there are several buildings there. I saw Old Main. I saw a building called Pollard. I saw another building, actually 2 or 3 more buildings. So are the items still in the buildings? Do you plan going forward to keep them there on the property, although the property will, I understand, have another use?
So I'm not privy to any future uses of the property. My sole responsibility was to identify and remove anything that we deemed relevant to Dr. King and the Civil War soldiers and the overall history of Old Main. Mm-hmm. So the artifacts that we've pulled, I'm working with Delaware County Historical Society, and we are going to do our best to make sure that these items are preserved in various places. We haven't really gotten to that road yet. So, that's as far as we've gotten with that. I mean, I think there's going to be items, we'd like to create some type of on-site, I don't know if memorial is the right word or not, but reflecting Dr. King's history there, reflecting the Civil War history there, and the overall history of the property. Mm. So I'd like to think at some level, some of those artifacts could be utilized in that. But that's as much plans as we have right now. That's as far forward as we've been able to get.
Patrick Parr and others seeking to preserve the seminary are deeply concerned.
There are a lot of historical artifacts around that area that we're very worried about it being preserved at this point. So we're wondering if it's being chipped away.
Janet Murphy shares that concern, both for what she sees and what she feels.
I went on a tour 2 years ago, and I felt his spirit there, and I saw his dorm room and his door, and it wasn't falling apart. And we all felt, whoever was on that tour, felt his spirit. And I just hope that it can be memorialized in some way.
Shakia Gordon-Hutt sees an even bigger picture.
besides the building, his spirit is really in the community. Like when I talk to people who live in a community and I bring up what we're doing with Old Main, it's always a story, or my mom knew him, or my grandma. And, you know, it brings out a camaraderie in Chester. But the people there, they love King. When they hear what we're trying to do with the building, they want it. They want to be involved, but they don't know what's going on with the building because these people are still stuck on Chester, a hospital. They don't understand what we're trying to do with the building, bring you real education, real leadership, real programs. So we would like to finish King's message, which is freedom for all people, justice, and that's what the real goal is and what we're trying to do.
And therein lies the tension. The controversial closure of the hospital has always overshadowed the crucial history of the seminary. While some want to maintain the entire building that is Old Main, others want to maintain parts of it. But as we await the final decision, King's legacy lives on in those whose lives he touched. Here's Karen Asper Jordan of the Cecil B. Moore Freedom Fighters.
We wanted to desegregate Girard College.
Mm-hmm.
So as young people, when the call came out, I had never been involved with the demonstration before. And Girard College was just around the corner from the house. So that made us join because we wanted to get kids in the school. So when King came, of course we were excited because he was big news. And my biggest thing was, I'm not going to let anybody hit me and not hit them back. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around people being beaten like that and not trying to do anything to protect themselves. So when he came, he was still an international figure, and you still had that pride that he was here in Philadelphia.
Reverend Dr. Alan E. Waller, senior pastor of the Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church in Philadelphia, encountered King at a different time.
My father and Dr. King were part of the freedom movement. My father pastored Shiloh Baptist Church in Cleveland, Ohio. In September of 1967, my father's fourth pastoral anniversary. And, you know, in the Black tradition, you usually bring in one of your friends to preach. It's a time for the church to celebrate the pastor. And many Black churches at that point were turning away from Dr. King, because his voice had gone beyond a dream and had gone beyond, can we all live together? He was talking about the Vietnam War. He was talking about economic sanctions and reparations. You know, the sanitized version of King that made some white people comfortable is the I Have a Dream King. And what I celebrate about my father is that September of 67, if you will remember, that was around the time of the mayoral election of Carl Stokes, who would be the first Black mayor of a major city. Now, Carl Stokes wanted no part of Martin Luther King being in Cleveland, Ohio in September of 67, because he was trying to convince good white people to vote for him. Mm-hmm. My father was on the campaign for Carl Stokes, and he was the friend of Martin King. I cherish the picture that I have sitting on Martin Luther King's lap because it said that my father was willing to live in the tension of doing what was right for people, but running the risk of running afoul of a political friend. Yeah. It helped me now in hindsight, because at that time I was only 3.5 years old. Mm-hmm. But it helps me celebrate my father as one who stands on principle and not personality. And it reminds me of the anguish that Dr. King was going through. Everybody loves him today. Yeah. But by that time, everybody didn't love him, including Black people. Mm-hmm. They were afraid because he had gone beyond our needs and was pressing on for the needs of all people.
And perhaps that's the point of King's legacy, a legacy that includes Crozer Theological Seminary, where King learned to stand for justice, no matter the cost. I'm Solomon Jones. This is Freedom Journey, Sacred Places on WURD.
You've been listening to Freedom Journey, Sacred Places. This series is made possible through the generous support of our community impact sponsor, the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia. We also thank our community partners for helping connect these stories with audiences throughout our region. The Brewerytown Sharswood Neighborhood Coalition, Poquessing Trail of History, Byberry Friends Meeting, the Society for the Preservation of Philadelphia African American Assets, and the Fund for Sacred Places. Freedom Journeys is made possible through the support of the Office of Senator Vincent Hughes, State Representative Jordan A. Harris, Chairman of the Pennsylvania House Appropriations Committee and the Pennsylvania Department of Commerce and Economic Development, the Philadelphia Funder Collaborative for the Semi-Quincentennial, Comcast, PICO, the Philadelphia Parking Authority, Independence Blue Cross, and the Office of Philadelphia City Council Member Cindy Bass. To learn more, visit wordradio.com/freedomjourneys. Thanks for listening.